There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another Zoom discussion, this time pertaining to Women in Translation Month, a novella by a Korean-French writer who lives in Switzerland, I think. Winter in Sokcho by Elisa Shua Dusapin, translated from the French, not the Korean, but from the French, by Anissa Abbas-Higgins. I have just finished reading it yesterday, and I'm going to be chatting about it with Grace Eickmeyer of BookTube fame. Welcome back to my channel, Grace.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Shawn.
How
nice
you
to see you.
doing?
I'm doing well here in sunny LA.
It's sunny LA, and you said it's not as hot there as it is here. It's about 37, I think, at 12 noon. Good day to stay inside and talk about books on Zoom.
That's right.
So we both read it, and did you read it like just in the last few days, or had you read it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read it over the weekend. Mm-hmm.
Finished it yesterday, and I went back and reviewed the first half, which was a little bit more distant. So what would you say the book's about?
Oh, that's tricky. So we're following a young French-Korean or Korean-French woman that mirrors the author's mixed heritage, who lives in a small coastal town in northeastern South Korea. And the book takes place in the winter time, thus the title. And she kind of works a dead-end job at this guest house, and she encounters a Frenchman who's visiting the town ostensibly on kind of a writer's retreat, like self-imposed sort of. And it just sort of follows their growing relationship and sketches a little bit more about her childhood, her relationship with her mother, and a few other people in the town. That's what I would say.
Great. Let's dive in. What did you think?
Overall, I liked it. I thought it was successful as a novella and like structurally successful. I think that I enjoyed the atmosphere, but I'm not sure that the story is going to stick with me for a long time. So that's what I would say. It was kind of a solid 3-star for me.
Okay, well, I think we can just kind of stop talking now, because that's exactly what I thought. Except you said it much better. The only thing I would add that was a strength for me was I loved the writing / translation. I was beguiled by the prose. And I really liked the protagonist. But there wasn't enough to it for it to be a really positive reading experience, because it just wasn't enough to grab onto. What was there held my interest. And I loved the writing, and I loved the main character. But there wasn't much else going on. So
yeah, she hints at a lot of things that, you know, in a short story or novella type format is appropriate. I think there's a little bit of leaving you wanting, but I think that there were multiple elements that I wish had been drawn a little bit more. I don't want to say like fully, you know, like over the top, because that wasn't the tone of the story. But yeah, there were a couple things.
My feeling exactly. You don't have to, I didn't need every little thing tied up in a bow, but I didn't want everything left kind of so open-ended and ambiguous. At the very, very end of this video, we're going to get into something that happened at the end, and that will be well marked if you want to watch us discuss the spoilery ending of the book. You will have the chance to either watch it or not. What I missed until I saw it in a review, and I didn't believe it because I'd missed it, and I went back and reviewed, was how much older the French guy was than she was.
Yes, I actually was a little skeeved out by the potential romantic or sexual nature of their relationship, which is mostly aspirational, right? And so like they don't actually have that much interaction,
right?
But we see that there's sort of this like tone of yearning between both of them. Yes. And I was like, ooh, I don't know about this.
he's very touchy-feely in a way that she doesn't seem to know how to interpret, and is not uncomfortable. Well, she's uncomfortable with everything going on in her life, but
yeah,
I had to kind of reinterpret all that once I realized that he was old enough to be her father.
Yes.
So he's French, which is, I think you said, he's French, and he's a graphic artist, like graphic. I always never comic. What do you say? He's not a manga artist.
Graphic novelist.
Graphic novelist. Yeah. And he's there to possibly get inspiration for his.
Yes, ostensibly he's quite successful. Like he has a main character in a series that he's written multiple volumes, and he's sort of searching for the next volume and is thinking about setting it in this town or in Korea at least. And so he's looking for like research and, you know, an opportunity to create that story.
Aside from the description of his artistic process, I found him really uninteresting. And
Yeah.
he was withholding himself from her so much, and he was just such a stick in the mud, like it just kind of not there and not. There's an expression in Japanese, KY, I forget what K stands for, but it means you can't read the air. Like you're just so obtuse to any kind of social cues, and that's the way he was with her. But yet he seemed to be, in his own strange way, interested in her. Did you think it was just for her tour guide role, or was he actually? Well, I guess that's where the ending is ambiguous, so we won't go into that. But what did you think of him?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. He's boring, but I think that you could read him on a couple of levels. One of the things that we should mention is that the town is very close to the border between North and South Korea. And it's mentioned more than once that this sort of limbo that maybe the characters are experiencing is analogous to the limbo that the two countries are in this state of perpetual war. So my read of him is actually, he's uninteresting as a person, but there's also maybe this kind of like neo-colonial kind of Western gaze of him, where like he's using her. He's using her for her local knowledge, her skills, her playing on her youth and sympathies. So that's how I saw him, which is also maybe why they compare her to the writer to Marguerite Duras a little bit.
Fun fact that I just happened to stumble upon today about Sokcho is that at the end of World War II, it was part of North Korea. And then at the end of, not the end, but the armistice or whatever, the ceasefire at the end of the Korean War, it became part of South Korea. So it had that kind of, there was enough essence to the shifting of the border there that I'm always interested in stuff like borders.
I was going to tell you, Shawn, that one reason why I was excited to read this book, because I looked it up. At first, I wasn't sure if Sokcho was a real place or kind of like a literary version, right? But it's actually in the province that I was born in. But I don't know anything about it. Yeah, I've been there once, but when they are sort of exploring the nature and the beach and stuff, I have like a tiny personal connection to the setting.
Oh, that's fascinating. So you've been to Sokcho once?
I haven't been to Sokcho, but I've been to the town I was born in is a little bit south, maybe like 90 kilometers, also on the coast. So very similar in the immediate vicinity.
Fascinating. And what did we make of, what's the protagonist's name? Do we ever know her name?
I don't know if she's ever named.
I don't think so. She's not named on the synopsis. Because it's first person, that often is the case. Unless somebody calls her by name, but I don't remember. So what did you make of her?
Oh, I felt so sad for her. I think that she's troubled, clearly. Like, it's got some major body issues and major challenges with reconciling what her future is or what she's supposed to be doing with her life. And no one, except for weirdly her boss, is like helping her, I feel, or sympathetic or attuned to what's going on. So I just felt sad.
Her boyfriend was not attuned, and what's this French dude's name?
Karen. Yeah, Jan Karen.
Karen is certainly not attuned to, not to her. Yeah, there's a body dysmorphia thing happening. I don't know if it's an eating disorder, but there's something about purging and stuffing her face and feeling bloated.
Yes.
Referenced a lot.
So I would say for potential readers, there's a trigger warning there, some possible eating disorders for sure, that is exacerbated whenever she's interacting with her mother.
Yes. Her mother is a piece of work, isn't she?
Yeah.
Fascinating. That was another one of the portrayals of character that I thought was just brilliant. I mean, she was very vivid, and she was a fishmonger, and her specialty was
fugu.
Fugu, yeah. Fugu is, what do they call it in English? Blowfish?
Blowfish. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know. I wasn't surprised, but I didn't know that it was in Korea. But of course, it's in Japan, and it's the fish that is deadly. If you don't cut out the certain internal organs, it will kill you. I've tried it only once, deep fried, and it was absolutely delicious. Have you tried it?
I have tried it once in sort of like the raw, more like sashimi preparation that my mom does. And like it was fine. It was okay. I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to eat this many more times in my life, but I'll try anything.
I haven't tried the sashimi, but the fried, it was really, really good. I'm fascinated by fugu, blowfish, because I want to know the history. I'm sure there is no such history extant, but I want to know the history of how did they figure out how to eat it without killing themselves over the centuries.
Right? I agree. It's so interesting when I think about any of these, maybe what to us seems like more unusual food, like who was the first like daring soul, or how was it passed down through probably largely indigenous populations, right, where they're experimenting over time. But yeah, I find it very interesting.
Having to keep
Yes.
a record of what you've tried and what killed grandpa, so don't try to this. I'm just so curious about that. Anyway, a lot about eating and fish, and what's the other fish? Squid. There's quite a bit of squid being eaten in this novel.
Yes.
And she keeps wanting to make, we won't say too much about this until the end, but she keeps wanting to cook for Karen, and he is completely uninterested in trying. Even when she offers to make him French food, he doesn't show up.
Yes. Yeah, he's sort of portrayed as this insensitive tourist, right, who will buy like cup of noodles from the convenience store. And I think it's an interesting juxtaposition with his supposed interest in the culture, right, and trying to get a sense of place for his professional work. And when you also add her own issues with food, it's fascinating how strongly both she and her mother feel like one of her jobs is to cook for the guests at the guest house, right? And that's like really important to her and gives her a lot of creative fulfillment in what is a pretty dreary life. Yeah, I saw it as like quite offensive on his part that he, and she takes it quite personally too, that he just has no interest in all in like Korean cuisine.
Do you think most readers would dislike him? Because I thought it was really subtle the way he was portrayed, because we could see how much he wanted to, how much she, I don't know if the right word is liked him, but how interested she was in him. And I thought that he didn't come across as a villain, so I liked that. But by the end, I did not like him, and especially once I realized how old he was, I kind of reinterpreted some things that had happened. But I appreciated that there was nuances to the characterization.
Yeah, she hints that he has some tragic things in his past. I mean, don't we all? And there are a couple places where he does reveal a little bit more. It's sort of implied that he's in a funk, right? Like writer's block, or has had some personal things. At least at this moment in time, there is no relationship there for them, that they're just kind of encountering each other. And that even still, I don't even know that he is to her what she thinks he is. At one point she says, I just wanted to know what it felt like to be wanted or desired. It's more like each of the other characters is providing this feedback to her, right? She's searching for something. And so I don't even think that either of them really want to be with each other in that way. So it's not really, there's no there.
There's no there. And that was interesting enough to hold my interest. Like I wasn't bored by that, but I was left frustrated by the end. That like, what did I just read?
Similarly,
I want to talk about language. So, what language were they communicating in? Not French.
No, English. They were speaking English.
Uh-huh. And I'm always interested in that when it's a translation. So how is that rendered? And I thought it was quite subtle. But it was the translator, I mean, the text, the story made it very clear that she was intimidated to speak French with this French guy, but that she could have. She had the linguistic ability, but not the confidence.
And I think at least one point when he's opening up, he does speak French to her at one point.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's sort of like, will they or won't they in terms of revealing their true selves, right? And so for her, I think her refusal to speak French also pointed to not just like, oh, I feel weird with a native speaker, but it hints at how unresolved she is about her own identity, right? So part of it is that both the author and the main character here have a French parent and have this like mixed identity. She's having a hard time. She and her mom clearly don't talk about it. And so
early on, there's a reference made that the locals, the people in the town, gossip about her biracial and who was her father and all that stuff.
The holiday visit and the aunt and some of the larger themes that I think are present in maybe contemporary Korean fiction or of particular interest to Korean women writers that maybe aren't the focus of the novel, but certainly come up. And I think that happens with the holiday and with some of the other guests pertaining to issues of young women in Korean society.
Yeah, the aunt was another piece of work, and she was not very impressed to find her sister and niece wearing traditional Korean New Year's attire.
Yeah, she totally looked down her nose. There's this like urban rural divide, right? Like you hicks for wearing traditional clothes, and also how dare you like not be up on the latest trends, or like why don't you do this, this, and this? Surely that would help you be more successful. So there's really this kind of narrow path to success, I think, that brings a lot of pressure for the main character.
One of the moments in this novella that I will unfortunately probably never forget is when she has a big mouthful of kimchi and she's talking, and she's spitting small pieces of kimchi all over all the food and drink on the table that the aunt is.
Yeah. And so it's sort of like, how refined are you really? You're not too far from leaving this no-name town. What I'm struck by, and there's no real resolution here, but you can, the almost omnipresent ideas around beauty and how that affects your economic fortune to a degree that, I mean, of course, every country has problems with unrealistic beauty standards, right? But I think it's particularly hard for her. I had trouble visualizing even what she looked like because of her own dysmorphia or dysphoria, I forget which one. She's sort of told that she needs to eat more, but eat less. Don't eat at all. She should get plastic surgery. She shouldn't. She should leave the town. She should stay. You can tell that she feels hemmed in on all sides and that there isn't a clear answer for her. Like she doesn't even know what she wants really out of her life. And everyone has conflicting advice, even depending on what day you encounter them.
And then there was the other guest at the hotel that her face was all bandaged because she was there to recover from plastic surgery. That seems to kind of be flowing alongside all the other issues about female beauty and body and appearance.
I just felt really sorry for her and wished that she could get some help, I guess.
Do you know anything about the author, Dusapin?
I don't, and I haven't read much more. As far as I can tell, this is her first major work.
It's her debut, so I was impressed enough by this that I want to read whatever else comes out in translation. Because, especially if it's done by the same translator, because for a debut, this was impressive. I'm still hovering between a 3 and a 4-star rating. I'm just going to wait to see which way you were going to push me. She's 27, and as far as I know, if she doesn't live in Switzerland now, she has Swiss citizenship and did live there for several years. I'm not exactly sure where she lives right this moment. So she's of French and Korean background and has Swiss citizenship. So she is as multicultural as they come.
Yes, cosmopolitan. I would also read what else she puts out for sure, if it's translated and available. I think you're right. The writing is very good. It's very controlled. And that was the other thing I was going to talk about. What I also wanted more of is she hints at this duality of setting with the ugly beach and the guard towers and the fish market. But then there's the excursions, like to the temples and the waterfall and the national park. And I wanted a little bit more of both of those things, actually. But I think particularly of the nature. I don't need it to be like more flowery, but it was just a little deficient.
More of sketched than
drawn, yes.
By the end, I didn't feel like I really knew her or him.
Yeah.
I don't need to know. I'm not sure that's the right way to say it, but that's part of what I was left with, feeling fairly unsatisfied.
I would just say that even though I personally rated it a 3-star, I did like it. And I would recommend that people read it. I think it's very beautiful and impressionistic in a way, and a good example, I think, of literature and translation that's done well. So there's that.
I was impressed, especially once I realized it was a debut. Didn't quite work for me, but I would not try to talk anybody out of giving it a try. It's so short. So now, just to wrap up, Grace and I are going to talk for just a couple minutes about the ending. So if you don't want spoilers, then you should just stop watching now. All right? So there's a big thing that we mentioned earlier in our chat, that the protagonist is always wanting to cook for Karen, and Karen never avails himself of that opportunity. So one last time, after a rather contentious, emotional conversation, she demands, or urgently, she pleads with him, please try my cooking. And then she goes and gets a blowfish, this poisonous fish, fugu, from her mom's shop, and she prepares it. And so as soon as I realized that that's what she was cooking for Karen, I thought, she's gonna kill him with the fugu. Now, the way it ends, he wanders off, which is typical Karen. He just kind of wanders off. But do you think she was planning to kill him with fugu?
I really had a hard time. And that's actually one reason why I rated it the way I did, because in the description, the writing implies that she's being very careful and that she's trying to give like the best example, like a star showing. But at other times in the story, particularly when she's cooking with her mother, it's implied that she's not as careful as she thinks she is, or that she's portraying. So there's a little bit of unreliability in even her own self-assessment. So I read it that she was trying not to, but if she did, it wouldn't be the worst thing, because she wanted to be noticed, was demanding to be valued or like seen by him, and that would be the way to do it, you know? So I wasn't really sure, because I was like, well, either you want to impress him by like showcasing the best you can do that you've learned at the feet of your mother, or you want to just screw him over. I didn't know. It could have gone either way.
Now that's fascinating. I hadn't thought about the fact that you're right, that she's not as careful as she should be, and she ends up, was it a squid she was pulling apart? It was carving up or whatever, and there was squid ink went everywhere, and that kind of fits in with the ink that Karen was using to draw, and so there's all those kinds of associations, but her mother scolds her. So I hadn't thought about the fact that even if she didn't intend to kill him, that she could have accidentally killed him because she's not that good. And he's so obtuse about Korean food and Korean culture that he wouldn't have even on his guard. And
she intentionally did it when her mom was asleep. So like she could have said, hey mom, but because they don't have a true emotional connection, like I want to make this dish for the guest house, can you please show me, or can we make it together? But like, no, that would never happen. There's also the possibility that even though Karen said he would eat her cooking because he felt guilty for however things had gone, that he might not have, because he's a flake and he would just eat like ramen or something.
It's left ambiguous that way.
Yeah.
Those of you that have read the book, please put comments. What did you think about the ending? If you're going to talk about the ending in your comment in a spoiler way, just put a spoiler warning at the beginning of your comment. But otherwise, yeah, just really curious to see if Grace and I were a little freakish in thinking that or not. I don't think so. Well, I think that's a good introduction to this novella.
Yeah. The fact that multiple interpretations are possible and they all work in a way.
It's a good book club pick.
Yeah, for sure.
Grace, it was lovely to chat with you.
Yeah, well, let me know if you want to read something else. Maybe once you get through all your women in translation books, let me know for the fall.